So how do Trojans communicate and hide? Well, let's take the hiding mechanism first. When you go through and build a Trojan, again, remember, we're going to be attaching it to a legitimate piece of software. So technically, there are two different components to a Trojan, or I should say two different communication paths. The first one is called an overt channel. Now, if you were to define overt, you would describe that as something explicit or evident or obvious. So overt would be something like the newest version of Office or an MP3 file. It's the file that everybody wants. That's the overt channel. This channel, I have to make it enticing for you to want to install it. And this is what happens with malware, why there's so many pieces of it out there nowadays, is because one day everybody could want the latest version of Office. The next day, hot pictures of Dale come out and everybody wants to delete them. Or the latest game comes out. Or, hey, how about a screensaver? Listen, I'm a big Batman fan. You guys know that about me. Maybe I find a cool Batman screensaver that I'm going to go download. Well, again, that's going to be our overt channel. Now, the other channel that we deal with communication is the illegal side. This is called the covert channel. It's the hidden path that is used to transfer data across the network. And it's going to be built into our payload. Most attackers will rely on a technique that we refer to as tunneling so that it's not visible to somebody monitoring the network that information is leaving your environment. Maybe I tunnel it across, HTTP or HTTPS so you can't see it. At least anybody monitoring the network, it gets encrypted. You may want to make sure you understand the two differences between these channels for your immediate future. Wink, wink, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Now, if you've followed my courses, you know that I can't get across one course without using my favorite word. And here we go. There is a plethora. Notice how I rolled my tongue on that one. There's a plethora of ports that are used by different Trojans. And this is just a partial list. You'll notice that some of them actually utilize ports that you would not suspect. For example, port 21 for Blade Runner. Typically, that's FTP. Port 80, the Executioner Trojan uses that one. What else runs on port 80? I think one of my favorites, and very appropriately named, port 666. That's Satan's back door. So when we talk about understanding the ports that are being utilized, again, this is just a partial list. You need to be doing research and finding out the newest Trojans, what ports that they are utilizing. And when you see the traffic going across that port, you need to investigate. Yeah, I know that's hard, especially in port 80, right? Now, one of the things you would definitely want to do if you suspect a system of being infected by a Trojan is to do a fresh reboot of the system and see which ports are currently listening. There's actually different states for ports. When a port is in the listening state, it's there because the system put it in that state to listen, or it's waiting to make a connection to another system. Let me show you here. So I'm doing a fresh restart of my Server 2012 R2 box. Let's go ahead and go full screen on this bad boy, and we'll go ahead and log in here. Don't tell anybody my password. Change the view. Okay, so I'm going to come in here. I'm just going to open up a command prompt. Let me back up here. So I'm going to do a netstat, and let's throw a question mark at it so you can see the different options that you have. The most important, or one of the more important ones, is this -A, which displays all connections and listening ports. You'll also want to pay attention to the B, which displays the executable involved for creating that connection or listening port. So let's give that a shot. Let me scroll down here, and I'm going to do a netstat-AB. And a whole bunch of information is going to go by, so I'm going to use a pipe with a more command, which basically says, when I fill up the screen, please pause and wait for me to hit the space bar or any key to continue. So I'll hit enter, and you'll see here that it goes through and shows me the ports as well as the executable that's associated to it. Now you'll notice here that I do have a port 80, and my warning here would be this. It cannot obtain ownership information. Now, because this is a clean machine, I'm suspecting it's my IIS that's answering any requests for a web page. But you'd want to go through, and I'm going to continue through here. I'm going to scroll up here now, and you can see that there are several different executables using different ports. So I would be very suspicious of anything that says I cannot obtain ownership information. Now with SVC host, this is a process that's on your computer that hosts or contains other services that Windows uses to do what it needs to do. For example, Defender uses a SVC host process. So that's probably why I can't figure it out, but I would still want to be very, very cautious about this. Let me clear this out, and let me show you another one. This is a netstat-aon. And again, I'm going to pipe this to more. This is going to give me a list a little bit laid out a little bit better, but it also includes the PID. And this takes an extra step, but again, I'm a big fan of this one just because the aspect of, I've mentioned before, you should be aware of anything that's above 2000 in the PID. And what I could do, let's say that, for example, the 1792, it was a good year. You'll notice here that it's using a port. Well, what I'd want to do is come down here, open up my task manager, go to my details, sort by the PID, and look at 1792, which tells me it's a process that's for Windows service. You could also right-click on the process, as I showed you before, and open up the file location to see where it's executing from. Now in this case here again, it's SVC host. We know that's supposed to be in the Windows System 32 directory, but if it was something like, oh, well, if you haven't heard this story, back when I had my ISP, we had a customer who had a FTP, pirated FTP server up and running, unbeknownst to him. He had gotten hacked, and the executable, they called it SVC hosts. It was plural, not singular. And it was actually executing from the recycle bin. So again, in the words of G.I. Joe, knowing is half the battle.